When we look at a map of the world today, we see a highly interconnected global village. Our daily lives are deeply intertwined through shared trade, culture, and politics, with goods and ideas flowing constantly across well-defined national borders. Compare that to the early modern period, between 1450 and 1750. While trade routes were expanding and science was uncovering the mechanics of the solar system, the structure of power remained largely top-down, with authority concentrated in the hands of a few centralized empires. Almost everywhere, political life was governed by the divine right theory. This was the belief that kings and queens held absolute, unquestionable authority, handed down to them directly by God. This theory forced society into strict estates. A tiny elite sat at the top, holding all the wealth and privileges, separated by a hard line from the massive general population at the bottom, who carried the burden of heavy taxes and obligations. But as scientific inquiry grew, so did new philosophical ideas about human equality. Everyday people started asking why they were trapped at the bottom of this hierarchy. You had a population waking up to the idea of their own freedom, ruled by monarchs refusing to yield an inch of control. A violent political collision was now absolutely inevitable. In England, the Stuart kings, James I and his successor Charles I, were completely devoted to the divine right theory. They firmly believed they answered to no one, and they flatly refused to be questioned by the English Parliament. That dynamic broke in 1640. Charles I ran out of money to fund his wars. To get the special grants he needed, he was forced to summon what became known as the Long Parliament to approve new taxes. Instead of simply handing over the money, Parliament used their leverage. They aggressively pushed back against the king's autocracy, sparking a 5-year civil war between the king's loyalists and parliamentary forces. The parliamentary forces won, and in 1649, they put King Charles on trial, convicted him, and executed him. This execution proved that a monarch's supposed divine mandate offered zero physical protection against the actual will and the blade of the people. The immediate attempt to run England as a republic ultimately failed, but the old absolutist system was completely broken. This forced a massive political compromise in 1688. In this constitutional monarchy, authority no longer came from God. Power flowed from the bottom up, with Parliament strictly limiting the crown. Without a single shot fired, political control permanently shifted to the middle class and their elected representatives. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the 18th century American colonies were developing their own unique social structure. They were mostly populated by farmers and artisans, entirely free from the deep-rooted European systems of wealthy landlords and powerful princes. But ironically, that newly empowered English Parliament began treating those colonies with the exact same autocracy Charles I had shown them. They passed restrictive trade laws and imposed heavy taxes that favored London over the colonists. This economic exploitation provoked the Americans to demand a voice in how they were governed. They rallied around a clear, non-negotiable demand: no taxation without representation. In 1774, representatives from 12 colonies gathered at a congress in Philadelphia to attempt a peaceful resolution. They sent a direct petition to King George III, asking him to intervene against Parliament's overreach and restore their previous rights. The king flatly refused to help, and instead moved to suppress the colonies. Left with no other options, the Second Congress abandoned peace and prepared for armed conflict. They appointed George Washington to lead their newly formed army into open resistance against British forces. These events marked the onset of the Democratic Revolution, a transition where governments would no longer derive power from birthright, but from the consent of those they governed. By challenging the doctrine of divine right, these early conflicts established the core principles: representation, limited power, and the rule of law, that provided the starting point for modern democratic systems.